My name's Caleb. I'm a recovered drug addict. Tommy, thank you for asking me to be here. All the other guys that put this thing together and asked me to do this. It's a privilege to talk about anything, especially this program. The 12 steps that are written in this book and outline a spiritual program of action that completely changed my perception, gave me a whole new way to live, act, think, and everything, man. And in my experience, it was this first step that sold me on all of this, man. If I'm not completely convinced of this first step, then none of this other stuff's really going to matter for me, man. Dave last week touched perfectly on the allergy. So once I start, I can't stop. Once I put any drug, any substance at all inside of my system, I overshoot the mark. I go on a run that I don't intend to go on, and I have this abnormal reaction. And the problem for a guy like me is that whenever I have that reaction, I go on that run and I get sober and I'm removed from any substance. That's what I'm about to talk about, this powerlessness, the insane idea of why I pick back up again, man. And I get sober, I simply don't know what I'm up against. I don't know what I'm suffering from. And for years and years and years, man, I kept getting loaded, tried to get sober. I kept getting loaded and I couldn't. I was baffled and I didn't understand why. And then I get around you guys, man. I get into this book and I finally get a little glimpse, a little understanding of what it is that I'm up against. And it tells me on page 18, and there is a solution, that an illness of this sort, so what I have is an illness, man. I have this illness of this sort, as we have come to believe it as an illness, involves those about us in a way no other human sickness can. If a person has cancer, all are sorry for him and no one is angry or hurt, but not so with the addiction illness. For with it there goes annihilation of all things worthwhile in life. It engulfs all those lives touched. It engulfs all whose lives touch the sufferers. It brings misunderstanding, fierce resentment, financial insecurity, disgusted friends and employers, warped lives of blameless children, sad wives and parents. Anyone can increase the list. So this illness that I suffer from, I watched all these play out in effect, man. The misunderstanding, people did not understand why I acted the way I did, why I did the things I did. I didn't even understand why I acted the way I did or did the things that I did, man. No understanding of why I would ruin my life. I'd pick back up again, I'd try it again, and I'd just go back to it every time. Fierce resentment. I'd catch resentments with other people that would act a certain way towards me because of the way that I was acting, man. I would make resentment. Everybody would resent me for the things that I would do. Financial insecurities. I couldn't keep a job, man. I'd get paid. I'd pay the plug back. Whatever the case may be, man. I'd get fired due to getting loaded. If I got a paycheck, I'd spend it the day I got the paycheck. I couldn't make any money. I couldn't save any money. Disgusted friends and employers, man. I burned every bridge that I could possibly come across. Warped lives of blameless children, man. I would bring my daughter on these crazy adventures with me, a place that no child deserves to be, man. I would do all these things that I look back now on, man, and I see that I affected a lot of people. It wasn't all about me, man. I hurt a lot of people around, and anyone can increase this list. We hope this volume will inform and comfort those who are or may be affected. And exactly what this did is it informed and comforted me that I have this illness and I am affected with this thing, and I can do something about that. And how I was to come about and realize any of this, man, but the ex-problem addict who has found the solution, who is properly armed with the facts about himself, can generally win the entire confidence of another addict in a few hours. Until such an understanding is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. There's men in this room that approached me when I first got sober, and they had the same struggles I did. They in and out of jail, homelessness, all these things, and they simply would go through all these things, man, and they would continuously pick back up. And I could, for once in my life, relate to somebody that had the same story as mine, went through all the same things I did, and they were completely powerless over if they were going to pick back up or not. On page 21, but what about the real addict? He may start off as a moderate drinker. He may or may not become a continuous hard user. And I apologize if I mangle words around this time, man. I'm doing the best I can with this. But at some stage of his using career, he begins to lose all control of his drug consumption once he starts to use. Here's the fellow who has been puzzling you, especially in his lack of control. He does absurd, incredible, tragic things while using. He is a real Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Seldom mildly intoxicated, he is always more or less insanely drunk. The last 6, 10, the last long time of me getting loaded, man, I was never just a little buzz. I was never just a little tipsy. I was always insanely loaded, right? I never had a medium, man. I would try to find that medium. I would try to find that balance where I could just be okay, feel better, all right, but I overshot the mark every single time, and I was more or less always insanely loaded. His disposition while drinking resembles his normal nature but little. He may be one of the finest fellows in the world, yet let him use for a day, and he frequently becomes disgustingly and even dangerously antisocial. I wouldn't fancy myself as one of the finest fellows in the world whenever I'm trying to sober up or doing a little better, but I could kind of manage things a little bit better. But as soon as I put one in me, I turn right into that different person, man. Something about it, as soon as it hits my system, I'm a completely different person. He often possesses special abilities, skills, and aptitudes, and has a promising career ahead of him. He uses his gifts to build up a bright outlook for his family and himself. And again, man, it's nothing special. What that looks like in my life is I would get a job. I'd be able to make some money. I'd maybe get a room to rent or something. I'm no longer homeless or couch. I would start to make progress in my life. And what would happen is I would pull the structure down on my head. Everything would crumble right in front of me because I would go on a senseless series of sprees. And here's the fellow who ought to go to bed so intoxicated he ought to sleep the clock around. Yet early the next morning, he searches madly for the drugs he misplaced the night before. So in my experience, man, it's not it. I would definitely go to bed some nights, and then some nights I would just sit in the middle of the room, geeked as can be, man, and I would just take that little moment just to calm down or whatever. And I don't know if you guys have any experience with Xanax, but I would take a bunch of Xanax, I'd black out, and I'd try to either hide things where I think I would find them the next day, man, and then I'd wake up and they wouldn't be there. And like 9 times out of 10 is I overshot the mark and I took everything, and I'm trying to frantically look for these things that I thought I misplaced. And what happens is I resentful at everybody around me. I throw a fit, man, and in all reality, I just overshot the mark and I took everything I had the night before. This is by no means a comprehensive picture of a true drug addict, as our behavior patterns vary, but this description should identify him roughly. And here it is, man. Why do I behave like this? Why do I keep doing these things? If hundreds of experience have shown him that one drug means another debacle with all its attendant suffering and humiliation, why is it that I pick back up again? Why can't I stay on the wagon? What has become of the common sense and willpower that he still sometimes displays with respect to other matters? If hundreds of experience, if I look back on my track record, man, I know every time I pick back up, man, something happens where I either end up in a jail cell, I either end up with a bunch of people mad at me, I end up homeless. Why is it that I pick back up again, right? Perhaps there will never be a full answer to these questions. Opinions vary considerably as to why the addict reacts differently from normal people. We are not sure why once a certain point is reached. Little can be done for him. And in my book, Dave, you touched on it great last week, is hopeless, man. Once I have reached that certain point, which I did for a long time before I even got sober, little can be done for him. And we cannot answer this riddle. We know that while the addict keeps away from drink, as he may do for months or years, he reacts much like other men. And we are equally positive, it goes back to that allergy, man, we are equally positive that once he puts one, whatever, into his system, something happens both in the bodily and mentally, which makes it virtually impossible for him to stop. Once I start, I can't stop. That phenomenon of craving kicks in, and I go until I'm either physically removed by either the sheriff's office or I'm out of money or whatever the case may be. I can't stop on my own. This experience of any addict will abundantly confirm this. These observations would be academic and pointless if our friend never took the first one, thereby setting that terrible cycle in motion. Therefore, the main problem of the alcohol or the addict centers in his mind rather than in his body. And if you ask why he started on that last spinner, the chances are he will offer you one of 100 alibis. And it says right here, man, therefore the main problem of a drug addict centers in my mind. So it's a guy like me, before I even pick that first one up, I can be removed from whatever the case may be, months, couple days. This thing is starting in me, this illness that I have, this spiritual malady, this problem of all this stuff that I got going on happens before I even pick that first one up. It centers in my mind. If the problem is in my mind, it's not that first one. It's why do I pick up that first one before I even get started, man, that I have this illness, right? And You can ask me why I did it. Why did I go back? If I know what's going to happen, if I know once I start I can't stop, I could totally get behind the allergy, man. I could understand that. Once I start, I go on these runs. I could not understand when I first got around, man, is why do I go back every single time when I have no reason to? It's not going to do any good for me. Why is it that I pick back up again? And I've done this too many times to count. I'll offer you 100 alibis. Somebody made me mad. It's a good day. It's a bad day. I just wasn't feeling right, man. I just had a little anxiety. I had to take the edge off. Once in a while, I might tell you the truth, right? And the truth, strange to say, is usually that he has no more idea why he took that first one than you have. Some users have excuses with which they are satisfied part of the time, but in their hearts, they really do not know why they do it. And once this malady has a real hold, they are a baffled lot. There is the obsession that somehow, someday, they will beat the game, but they often suspect they are down for the count. And this would happen to me, man, and I would sit back and I'd reflect on it, and I'd realize, like, man, something's got to change. And there's this obsession that somehow, someday, I'll be able to use safely, man. I'll stop smoking the meth, man. I'll stop taking those Xanax, because I go on those blackouts, which lead me to all this. I'll just smoke the meth, man. I'll just do a couple bumps of cocaine. I try to justify this in any type of way that I can, man. But what happens is it's that allergy, man. But I don't realize, like, it centers in my brain, man. As much as I don't want to do this, man, I'm gonna pick back up again. And the tragic truth is that if a man be a real addict, that happy day may not arrive. He has lost control at a certain point. In the using of every addict, he passes into the state where the most powerful desire to stop using is of absolutely no avail. For the last, I don't know, maybe 3-4 years of my addiction, man, my active addiction, I couldn't get enough of this stuff inside of me to stop my head, man. And I wanted everything just to live a sober, productive, happy life, man. But what happens to a guy like me that is completely powerless over this deal is the desire, the will, the want, the whatever the case may be, man. My own self, I could not do that. And I couldn't understand why, but this next paragraph breaks it down for me. The fact is that most addicts, for reasons yet obscure, for reasons that are unknown, have lost the power of choice in using. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force, with enough force, the memory of the suffering humiliation of even a week or a month ago. And it tells me right here, man, I am without defense against that first one. I can ruin my life. I can have my mom cry. I can have my kid taken away from me. I could go to jail for a bunch of things, man. And I'd get out and I'm sober and I'm just me in my own head, man. And that problem centers in my brain. And I could want all I want not to pick up. I do not want to pick up. I know it's going to happen, but it tells me I am without defense against that first one. And we read this earlier at the beginning of the meeting, man, and I love it completely. If you are seriously as addicted as we were, we believe there is no middle-of-the-road solution. We were in a position where life was becoming impossible. And if we had passed into the region from which there is no return through human aid, we had but two alternatives. And I was in the position where life was becoming impossible, man. I had burned every bridge that I possibly could. I was homeless. I was living in a tent, man. I had no family that I could talk to because I'd robbed everybody around me. I'm on bond for a bunch of charges. I don't have a driver's license. And I simply cannot stop putting this stuff inside of me, no matter how bad I don't want to. And I cannot understand why. I had passed through that region where no human power could help me. None of you guys, not my crying daughter, not my mother, not anybody around me, man. I had passed through that, and I had but two alternatives, right? One was to keep going to the bitter end, just running that thing all the way to the ground. Just, you know what, like, screw this, man, and keep getting loaded and running that thing until I'm either locked up permanently or I'm dead, man. Or one was to go to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of my intolerable situation as best as we could, man. Getting loaded as I possibly could just to numb everything going around me. Or the other, man, is to accept spiritual help. And for a guy like me, you kind of touched on it last week, that's hard for me to pick, man. I really, really, really want some help, man. I really, really, really want to get sober and I want to live a good life. But I can't put this stuff down, man. And the way it was presented to me to accept spiritual help will lead me right to chapter 3, more about addiction. More about addiction, guys. And this is where the spiritual help, I was at that end of that run, man, and I was blotting out the consciousness of that intolerable situation as best I could, and I had the option to accept this spiritual help. And what that looks like to a guy like me is I ended up homeless. And then from that homeless state, I was in a halfway house. And a lot of guys in this room here tonight came into that halfway house. And like it says, that ex-problem user was properly armed with the facts about himself. These guys came in, they told their stories to me. They got loaded the same way I got loaded. Their kids got taken the same way my kids got taken. They were in and out of jail. They were homeless, and they could not stop using. No matter how bad they wanted to, man, they could not stop putting one inside of them. And the way it was broken down to me, man, is I'm an addict because once I start, I can't control the amount that I'm going to take. And when I'm stopped, I cannot stay stopped. That qualifies me to be a drug addict. Once I start, I can't stop. And when I'm stopped, I cannot stay stopped. As simple as that. Most of us have been unwilling to admit that we were real drug addicts. No person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove that we could use like other people. The idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his using is a great obsession of every abnormal user. The persistence of this illusion is astonishing, and many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. I tried for so many years to control and use safely. I tried that great obsession of every abnormal user, man. I tried everything I possibly could to be able to function a normal life and still be able to get loaded. Maybe just not the way I usually get loaded, just to be able to take the edge off, man, because I got this head on me that I just want to sit down. I want to be able to breathe, man, and I want to live life, but I can't see being able to live life sober. I can't get that. I'm in the grip. We learn that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were drug addicts. This is the first step in recovery. So up to this point, man, I got to look back on my track record. Once I start, I couldn't stop, and when I'm stopped, I pick back up every time. The first step is one of the most important steps, because if I'm not convinced that I suffer from this, none of this other stuff is going to matter for me. And what the first step in my eyes is a conclusion of my mind. I have to be convinced and fully grasping the idea that as sober as I am right here today, tonight, talking to you guys, without a miracle in my life, I'm going to get up, I could leave here, and I could, without defense, man, it could just be presented right in front of me, and I have no mental defense against that first one. No matter how bad I don't want it, no matter how good life is going, how bad life is going, a guy like me is going to pick back up every single time. By every form of self-deception and experimentation, they will try to prove to themselves exceptions to the rule, therefore a non-drug addict. If anyone is showing the inability to control his using, can do the right about face and use like a gentleman, our hats are off to him. And it got to this point in the book, and my sponsor is like, if you're not convinced of this thing, man, there's a suggestion in this book. Go try it. Go back out there. Go pick back up. If you're not convinced of this thing, see what happens, right? I don't suggest that today, man. This fentanyl, this stuff out here is killing people, but it might be worth a case of the jitters to understand a full knowledge of your condition, and to get you convinced of this deal, and to finally do something about it, man. And it goes on to say, for those who are unable to stop or drink or use moderately, the question is how to stop altogether. We're assuming, of course, that the reader desires to stop. Whether such a person can quit upon a non-spiritual basis depends upon the extent to which he has already lost the power to choose whether he will use or not. Many of us felt that we had plenty of character. There was a tremendous urge to cease forever, yet we found it impossible. This is the baffling feature of addiction as we know it, this utter inability to leave it alone no matter how great the necessity or the wish. And that breaks it down for me, man. This thing that we suffer from, this illness, this spiritual malady, this disease, whatever, man. This thing that I'm suffering from, without a miracle in my life, without a power, without something beyond human aid, I'm going to get loaded again. Most addicts have to be pretty badly mangled before they really commence to solve their problems. I had to beat my head against the wall for many, many years until it got bad enough till I hit the state of absolute hopelessness. I've been desperate so many times. I've been desperate for a better life. I've been desperate to stop. I've been desperate to just get out of my own head, man, but that was not enough. When I was at the state of absolute hopelessness where I'm ready to kill myself because I can't go on like this anymore, where everybody around me is just resentful towards me because of the actions that I've done. I have no friends, no family, nothing left to do, and no more ideas to think of, no exit plan, no strategies, no nothing, man. My life was pretty badly mangled, and I was finally ready to commence to solve my problems. I have heard that there is no doubt in my mind that you were 100% hopeless as I was. I've been hopeless apart from divine help. Have you offered yourself as patience? This is coming from a doctor and a psychiatrist, man. I would not have taken you if I had been able to avoid it. People like you are too heartbreaking. Though not a religious person, I have profound respect for the spiritual approach in such cases as yours. For most cases, there is virtually no other solution. And once more, the addict at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first one. Except in a few rare cases, neither he nor any other human being can provide such a defense. His defense must come from a higher power. So the first step tells me I'm screwed, man. From the doctor's opinion, 43 pages in, man, it tells me without a miracle in my life, apart from divine help, man, I'm going to get loaded whether I want to, whether I don't want to. So I got to come in here and I got to deflate my ego just enough. I got to deflate it simply by asking somebody to help me, asking somebody to sponsor me, to walk me through this book. And I'm powerless over this deal, right? And the unmanageability part is I'm just unable to achieve my own purpose, man. I can't keep a job. I can't be a father. I can't be a brother. I can't be a son. I can't do things that other normal people can do on a daily basis. My life is unmanageable because I am unable to achieve my own purposes. I have to come to a conclusion, and a full, in-depth conclusion, that I suffer from this, and I need a power. I need God. I need a miracle in my life to prevent me from leaving here and getting loaded here tonight. First step is kind of doom and gloom, man. It tells me I'm screwed apart from a miracle. 2 through 12 leads me right to that power. I tap into that power, and I can find sobriety, and I can recover from this hopeless and seeming state of mind and body, man. I don't have to live in that misery anymore, but if I separate myself from this power, if I separate myself from you guys, I am a couple bad thoughts, a couple bad decisions, a couple bad days from putting another one inside of me. And when I put that one inside of me, I'm going to go on that run. That allergy's going to kick in, and the cycle starts over and over. First step gives me a clear understanding of what I suffer from. For the first time in my life, I realize that I'm, to my innermost self, conclusion of the mind, completely convinced that I am a drug addict, man. And 2 through 12 leads me to this power that I need to tap into to prevent me from picking back up. Thank you guys for letting me share.
Thanks, Caleb.